Hey, what's up everybody? Commander Radix here bringing you another video. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just finished reading Duke, Volume 1. Knowing is Half the Battle by Joshua Williamson. This is the third trade paperback release that is set in the Energon Universe. As you know, I have been reading the Energon Universe, and I've been reviewing them trade by trade as they are released. Now, with Void Rivals, I wasn't entirely sold on the Energon Universe through Void Rivals. I thought it was interesting, but I wasn't completely sold on the idea yet. Transformers Volume 1, Robots in Disguise. It was good for Transformers. It was a nice fresh start. It didn't feel really that contained, and I still left with an impression. I feel like I had just dipped my toes in the water, you know what I mean? I wasn't entirely sold on it just yet. I hadn't become a big Energon Universe fan through Transformers Volume 1. Well, Duke, Knowing is Half the Battle was released, and let me tell you, this book has made me an Energon Universe fan. It is the best book of the Energon Universe out of the three I have read so far. It was top-notch excellent. The art was beautiful. I really enjoyed the art style. I really enjoyed the dialogue. It was really well written. The thing with G.I. Joe, and I said this in my last video about how I'm really picky about my G.I. Joe. My G.I. Joe is very much the IDW Hasbro Universe G.I. Joe, which is, it takes itself seriously, so it's not like Marvel cartoony, or like Marvel cartoony, not Marvel comic-y, and especially not cartoony. But at the same time, it's not super serious. It's not like just straight up a military political thriller thing, right? With like where they're infiltrating Iran, right? It's not, I'm not into that deep level of G.I. Joe. But I like this healthy medium, which I thought the IDW Hasbro Universe G.I. Joe really did a good job of. In the IDW Hasbro Universe, which was my standard for G.I. Joe, you have a secret G.I. Joe organization versus a secret Cobra organization. It went really well. They all have experimental technologies and their own personalities, but it still takes itself a bit seriously. But like, it's a very fine balance, and if you go too much in one way, just too much in one of the two ways, then I start to go, eh. But let me tell you, this is good G.I. Joe. At least for me, good G.I. Joe. This was the book that sold me on the idea of the Energon Universe, that this was going to be the Hasbro Universe from the IDW days, but done better. The G.I. Joes have all their personalities. I really liked Duke. It is very rare that I like Duke. Usually Duke is the equivalent of white bread for me. Bread and water, right? I'm not a big fan of Duke, but reading the book Duke made me a fan of Duke. It's fascinating. They incorporated the G.I. Joe vehicles well, which the G.I. Joe vehicles are one of those things where at least the Joe vehicles themselves I get a bit iffy on. I like the Cobra vehicles because it makes sense in the context, but like, I don't know how to describe it, but I'm not a big fan of Joe vehicles. However, this series incorporated Joe vehicles very well, and I don't even have a problem with Joe vehicles per themselves. I just want them to be introduced well, and I feel like it was a good introduction, so now I don't think I'm going to be that bothered by Joe vehicles in the Energon Universe. It was a fully contained story, a well-developed, fully contained story, which I really liked. You know, especially since I'm reading these trade by trade. This trade collected the first the 5 issues of the Duke miniseries, plus a G.I. Joe story from the Energon Universe special, which ties really deeply into Duke. You know, reading Duke felt like the Energon Universe had begun, right? You had the Void Rivals, which had Jetfire in it. Then you had Transformers, which had Jetfire and Duke in it a little bit. You know, it sort of felt like, you know how with the MCU, like there's the Iron Man movie and then it ends with Nick Fury. And then there's the Hulk movie and then it ends with Iron Man. It's like, okay, these movies are set in the same universe. But then once you get into like Captain America, then it's starting to really feel more interconnected, even though they haven't all met yet. Duke felt like the Captain America of the Energon Universe, the Captain America First Avenger of the Energon Universe, except it wasn't set in the past, it was set in the present. The entire plot is coming out of Transformers Volume 1, which, let me tell you, reading these books trade by trade as they are released gives you like that sort of cinematic universe feel where, you know, you're watching movie by movie, and like when you're watching them in one sitting, you know, you're watching a movie in one sitting, you can read a graphic novel in one sitting, and you're like catching all the references while it's happening. I don't know, man, this Energon Universe, especially this Duke book, has excited me. I am excited for the future of the Energon Universe. I really like the epilogue, where we see sort of hints at the future series that are coming. Now this is going to be weird because I know a lot of you are reading issue by issue, I'm reading trade by trade, so I'm here like saying, oh, I'm interested in what's going to happen in the Cobra series and what's going to happen in the Scarlet and the Destro book, and you guys are over here like, we already read it, Radix, it's already about finished. The Cobra Commander book ended, Radix, you still haven't read it because the trade hasn't been released yet. But yeah, it's coming out of Transformers 1, right? It's coming out of Transformers Volume 1, Robots in Disguise, after Starscream brutally murdered Duke's friend in front of his eyes. This book, by the way, keeps up the Energon Universe theme of people brutally dying. This book does not shy away from death. It also carries on the idea of grief and trauma, which was really popular, which was really big in Transformers Volume 1. It felt like a very natural offshoot of Transformers Volume 1 because those themes were so strong. And by the way, I really like the standout moment in this book is when Duke brutally kills a battle android trooper, a bat. If you don't know, if you're not a G.I. Joe fan, a bat is sort of a mechanical it's a robot soldier, right? It's usually used by Cobra. We haven't gotten to Cobra yet in this Energon universe, although Cobra Commander's out, but that's another story. But M.A.R.S Industry develops a bat, it attacks Duke, and Duke kills it, and there's this scene where he's like brutally punching the battery pack to the bat and like murdering the bat, and while he's doing it, it intersplices with panels of Starscream killing Duke's friend. And it's like this mirror of, you know, a robot killed a human, now this human is getting revenge on this robot, and I have never seen a Cobra bat or a M.A.R.S Industry bat being used to express the same human versus robot theme of Transformers in such a clear way. I was really excited about how that bat was used. It's another one of those things where, you know what, G.I. Joe and Transformers really do belong in the same universe. It's really weird to separate the two. And seeing that little moment with the bat just sort of like made me remember, it gave me the same feeling I felt back during the IDW Hasbro universe when the IDW Hasbro universe would do genius things with its shared universe. And I say shared universe, like originally, like the very first Transformers fiction, both the cartoon and the comics were both set in the same G.I. Joe universe. I will die on this hill of saying Transformers and G.I. Joe are one continuity. And then there's this hint that Destro is looking for another power source. I know Cobra Commander is dealing with Cobra Commander and Megatron, so I'm wondering if maybe they're going to use Megatron as a power source in a future trade paperback as I'm reading these. I was also intrigued by the epilogue where Hawk reveals that he's making a secondary team, another team that's like parallel to G.I. Joe. It's fascinating. One concern I got while reading this book was like, wow, this is great. G.I. Joe is kind of getting more characterization and development and world building than the Transformers are, though. Transformers, at least Volume 1, was a very slow burn and very much more of a spectacle, right? While Duke was definitely more of a character study and setting up things. I didn't feel like Transformers Volume 1 set up things to the same degree Duke was. And I don't think Transformers Volume 1 gave a lot of world building like Duke Volume 1 did. And seeing how they're releasing these books where like there's multiple G.I. Joe miniseries going on, focus on individual characters at different points in the world, versus Transformers, which is just one Transformers series, I'm like, I know the Transformers series is an ongoing title, but with the way they're doing G.I. Joe's going to get so much like a lopsided amount of world building in this Energon universe so far. I do think it's probably a good idea if Skybound did some sort of equivalent to the Transformers Spotlight series, or maybe the Transformers Galaxy series, or do straight up what they're doing with G.I. Joe and making mini-series focusing on individual Transformers characters. I think that could be a great idea and really help build up the universe. And then there are some other properties I would like to see included. You know, I still feel that Micronauts and ROM need to be in it. I know that I don't think Skybound has the ROM license. Who has the ROM license? Someone needs to be making ROM comics. I miss ROM. We really need more rom-comics. Listen to me saying we need more rom-comics. Look at me excited to be reading comics again. That's something I did not think was going to happen. I feel like it's 2017 all over again. We're like re-entering 2017 in a lot of different ways here. You know, Transformers lore has become the main flagship series of the Commander Radix channel. Videos are coming out more regularly. This is insane. I don't know what's going on. I was never maybe this Energon Universe could get me excited about M.A.R.S. if they did M.A.R.S. IDW failed to get me excited about M.A.R.S. Does Skybound have the rights to Action Man or Micronauts? You know, the Action Man miniseries was one of my most favorite parts of the IDW Hasbro universe. I hope they can make an Action Man series that is of that quality. I kind of felt that through the Duke volume, though, because they focus on Duke being a man of action, so Duke is kind of... This story was kind of similar to the Action Man story, including, like, Cybertronian technology bits. Other things I liked about the book. Rock and Roll and Stalker, terrifying. They are like... The book really shows that these are skilled soldiers when they have that scene where, Rock and Roll just starts a little terrorist attack and it sends Duke running away right in front of Stalker's sniper rifle, right? That was well done. I like that Hawk is the guy in command. I really like Hawk. Hawk was kind of funny in some places. This book had a good amount of humor. Its humor was tasteful. Its humor was well balanced. It was the best humor I've seen in the Energon universe so far. The Baroness, perfect. The Baroness was perfect in this book. Major Blood was threatening and kind of funny at the same time. Destro, I still miss IDW Hasbro Destro. We didn't get too much characterization for Destro in this book, but I know that there's a whole mini-series about Destro coming out, so hopefully we get more backstory there. I love that G.I. Joe is a secret organization. I love that Cobra is probably going to be more secretive, more underground. There's sort of the idea that at least M.A.R.S. Industry has a big influence in the U.S. government, and then G.I. Joe is the U.S. government, but they are two secret, deep state entities fighting each other. That's a good thing, that's something that came from the IDW Hasbro universe that's carried forward that I really love. The Baroness being a G.I. Joe thing is one of those things where, as long as there are slow character moments that's going to develop her character throughout the Energon universe, then I'm okay with it. If we aren't careful to like develop these characters or give them character moments, I don't want this to turn into like a Megatron being an Autobot thing, or even Soundwave working with the Autobots thing from the IDW Hasbro universe, because that gets kind of boring, because it's either not going to develop their character or they're just going to change sides eventually. So as long as it's Baroness is going to join Cobra the moment she finds out about Cobra. So I just hope that it develops the Baroness character. Baroness and Duke in the Duke book, great. I just hope that continues and she doesn't just become a flat, one-dimensional character in the future. That's the fear with shared universes, But man, I know this wasn't exactly a logically ordered, structured video. This is just a first impressions vlog that I'm making on how much I love Duke Volume 1. I highly recommend, if you're not following the Energon Universe, the Energon Universe might be good, right? We only have 3 books so far, but Duke gives me hope. I am looking forward to the Cobra Commander book. That will be the next trade that is released that I will review. I'm looking forward to the Destro book, which is the preview that I read. And it's funny, reading them trade by trade, it really does feel like the Marvel Cinematic Universe experience, where you have the movie, and then you have, like, the mid-credits after the mid-credits scene, and then you have, at the end of the credits, the end credits scene. Like, for this book, you had the Duke story. It ends, and then you have the epilogue, which is like the mid-credits scene, and then you have the preview for Destro, which is like the, the after-credits scene. I'm doing too much MCU style reading into this, but it's good. But that's going to wrap up this little video, this vlog. Let me know about your thoughts about Duke if you've read it yet. If you haven't read it, I strongly recommend you read it. If you're a Transformers fan who hasn't really gotten to G.I. Joe, if this Duke book is how they're going to do G.I. Joe through this Energon universe, I strongly recommend the Energon universe as your entry point into G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe is really good. Transformers fans who are sleeping on Transformers fans who are sleeping on G.I. Joe are missing out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Links to my social media are all in the description, including my second channel where we go into real life lore, history, mythology, things like that. If you're interested in that, consider checking that out. And thank you so much for watching. I feel like I've said this 3 times. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.
Every single beat I felt before, every single time